Okay, SEC football fans, this is where you need to be each and every week. What we do here on the SEC in 60 is we talk nothing but SEC football, no other sports, just SEC football for a full 60 minutes. We do it each Monday right here on Google Hangouts, so you can catch us live right around noon time each and every week, noon Eastern time, 11 Central, or you can catch us on YouTube at MarkRogersTV.com as well. We've got the replay. It'll be posted right there on YouTube in just a matter of minutes after we get done with the show. We also release this as a podcast that you can catch on Podbean and also on iTunes. Just look up Mark Rogers TV. You'll see a listing of a ton of podcasts because I release them almost every day. Just look for the SEC in 60 posts there, and we're going to have great guests. We're going to have all sorts of broadcasters, bloggers, some former players, as we're going to find out in just a second, and a number of people that know the league, know SEC football. My name's Mark Rogers. You can catch me on Twitter at MarkRogersTV. Here's my deal. I've been on television and radio for about 23 years now in various forms. So I started off in Ohio, did some news, did some sports and play-by-play there. Also moved on to Mississippi as sports director at CBS station there, WCBI, covering primarily Ole Miss, Alabama, and Mississippi State for 6 years. That was all sorts of fun. Moved on to a television network you may have heard of, ESPN, for the last 13 years in production operations management there for the past 13 years. I've also done a number of hosting and voicing of highlights on ESPN.com. And most recently, we are thankful to Dr. SEC Peter Flournoy. Reached out to me a few months ago about doing something here on the SEC Radio Network. So you can also catch us there. So no excuses for not catching us. We're releasing a number of forms of where you can catch us for the SEC in 60, whether you want to see the faces, talk back and forth, or you want to catch the audio, again, on a podcast or on the SEC Radio Network. It will be released here in the next few hours on Monday afternoon. So that's every Monday, SEC in 60, full 60 minutes of SEC talk, and you can catch me on Twitter as well at MarkRogersTV. Look me up on Facebook, where we not only post our content, but top content from bloggers all over the country dealing with the SEC and every conference in college football across the board. We are so happy today to be joined, and this is a great way to kick this off, because if you really think about it, I can't think of too many people that would have a better feel for what's going on in the SEC, both from a standpoint of being on the field against most of these guys, and then also having the perspective of stepping back for a year and now having the objectivity of watching as a fan and as an analyst. And we're happy to be joined by James Franklin, a former Missouri quarterback from 2011 on to 2014. Just want to remind you of what Mr. Franklin accomplished both in the Big 12 and in the SEC. 2011 became the starter when Blaine Gabbert moved on to the NFL, was a high pick in the NFL draft. James Franklin, 63% passer there in 2011, his first look at major college football, and he responded. 21 touchdowns, 11 picks, 8-5 record, a number of comebacks. Look at the game logs from the 2011 season for Mizzou. They came back against a number of teams in the fourth quarter led by James Franklin, defeated Texas for the first time since 1997. And again, we're not talking about Texas 2014. We're talking about Texas just a few years ago when they were a much better football team. And Independence Bowl MVP in defeating North Carolina, 274 yards of total offense and 3 touchdowns. 2012, got hit with that shoulder injury. Remember, just a few years ago, we were all wondering, can Mizzou hang with the SEC? I had my doubts. A number of people had their doubts because Mizzou wasn't necessarily dominating the Big 12. They were typically winning a very solid program, winning 8-9 football games a year most of the time. But could they come into the SEC and hold their own? Well, it didn't help that James was hurt for a great portion of 2012. And yeah, Mizzou took its knocks around the SEC, going 2-6, 5-7 overall. Shoulder injury for James there. Came back strong in 2013. Mizzou got off to a tremendous start. Of course, more injuries set in. I believe, if I remember right, didn't jot this down, but I believe I was watching the Georgia game, and that's when it all went down. Matty Mock stepped in, did a fine job as well, and continues to right now. James came back, played 10 games, had another great touchdown to interception ratio, 19-6, led this team back in the last few weeks to capture that SEC Eastern Division title, which we were all shocked by, considering where the program came from the year before and really didn't compete in a few SEC games, and then captures the SEC Eastern Division title. 42 points against Auburn. That's remarkable. So that Auburn offense was almost impossible to keep up with, but Mizzou was able to do it to make that an incredible football game to watch, and James threw for 303 and 3 touchdowns in that game against a team that moved on to the BCS championship game. And then he culminates a great career with a Cotton Bowl win against a very good Oklahoma State team, 41-31, another thriller in that one. So, James, we appreciate you coming on. Not a whole lot of guys out there can say they played in the SEC Eastern or played in the SEC championship game and won a Cotton Bowl, finished in the top 10 last season. So remarkable end to your career. We appreciate the time, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me. It was definitely exciting to be able to play in the SEC championship game. Obviously, we would have liked it if we won, but it was a great experience, and we were happy to be there. And then the Cotton Bowl win was nice as well. It was a close one, came down to the end, and thankfully our defense stepped it up and helped us get that Cotton Bowl win.
Yeah, I just wanted to review that because for a lot of SEC fans, Mizzou just kind of showed up a couple years ago and were an afterthought after what they showed in 2012, and they thought, wow, this team just kind of came out of nowhere. But if you follow all of college football, you know that Missouri's been a postseason mainstay for quite some time under head coach Gary Pinkel. It's been a fine program for a long time, and just wanted to review your career because it's mighty impressive. So before we dive into what you're dealing with right now, James, can you possibly give us a feel for what might have been your greatest accomplishment, or what you look back on as a fond memory right now?
Honestly, I would say it's not a very common answer, but I would say the games and the times that I got hurt, it was frustrating. Sophomore year, I had a lot of little injuries that I played through, and we were still able to go 8-5. And then junior year, and not only was my shoulder, I got a concussion, and I tore my MCL as well. And so then coming back my senior year, separated my shoulder, and I was out. And the thing that I learned and the thing that I'm most fond of is it taught me greater life lessons, how to handle adversity, and also how to overcome it. Because going through a lot, football is not the most important thing in life. It's obviously important. I was there on a scholarship to help my team win. I was the quarterback. I needed to do everything that I could. And then once I got injured and then started struggling, that's when everything came down. The fans were going against me, my own fans, my own teammates, some of my coaches, they were going against me, and it was tough, and it was very frustrating. But in the end, it helped me learn how to overcome that. To keep a positive attitude and to be thankful for that, because I learned lessons that I'm going to need in the rest of my life. Whether I continue to play football or not, I'm going to need that. So I'm very thankful that I went through all those injuries. It was frustrating. I would have liked to win a bunch more games, but at the same time, I don't think I would trade it for what I went through, because it just taught me so much.
That's an amazing testimony right there, and testament to your perseverance, because we see it each and every week, whether we watch college or the NFL, guys being carted off the field, and that it has to set in some doubt, some thoughts of, okay, what happens after this? Am I ever going to be the same? What's the team going to think of me in regards to maybe replacing me with somebody else? And when you have those priorities in order in regards to your life in general and your career, then it probably makes things just a little bit easier, if not significantly. Maybe not easier would be the better word, but put it in a proper perspective, that there are other things out there in life, and football is extremely important, especially when you played at the level that you did, but certainly behind a number of other things in life. So, James, what do you got going right now? What's the outlook for you?
Well, I got picked up as a free agent after the draft with the Detroit Lions. I was there for a couple months, and then I got released the beginning of the 4th week of preseason. And so I didn't get to play at all in any of the preseason games. I didn't have any film to show the team. So right now, I'm training every day. I'm back here in Columbia, Missouri, in good old Missouri, as some of the older people say it. And back here training every day. I'm doing the best I can to be ready in case I do get a call. It's not looking like I will this year, so I'm going to try next year. And if I don't get picked up next year, then I'm going to try Canadian football, and that's a 2-year commitment. so I'll be over there for a couple years, and then plan on coming back after that and giving it another shot. And if I get picked up, I'm going to keep with it, but if not, I'm just going to move on from there. And currently I got married July 5th, so I've been married for about 3.5 months now. And my wife and I here in Columbia, she's doing some workouts with me. She's kind of become a little coach. And then on the weekends I'm speaking sometimes at churches, sometimes at schools, little sports teams, things like that, just to help with some income and just kind of enjoying the time here. As a college athlete, at least as a football player, I'm sure all the other sports go through it as well, but my experience was in college, we didn't really get to be a part of the university as far as some of the big events that they have, especially during homecoming week. So it's kind of nice being back here because now this week's homecoming week, and I told my wife we're going to every homecoming event and festival that they have because I just wanted to see what it was like because I never got to experience that while I was in college. So kind of excited about that and just trying to be as positive as I can because my wife and I, we talked, we hoped, and we prayed for a lot of time together. And we're getting it now. We didn't expect it to be necessarily not on a team or jobless or anything, but we're getting that, and we're excited about it and just trying to take everything one step at a time.
That is awesome, James. Congratulations. I know that it's been since July, but congratulations on the wedding and the marriage, and thanks for sharing where you stand right now. And, yeah, I think a lot of people that have just recently graduated from college and are thinking about those life pursuits, even as talented and as accomplished as you are, have a number of difficult decisions to make. So it certainly sounds like, man, you got a great partner there, and you've got a great situation in regards to your faith and your mindset going forward. So things will work out, definitely. All right, let's dive into some football here, James.
All right.
Your team looked good. I want to say on the scoreboard, there was no question who the dominant team was in this game, with Mizzou just bludgeoning Florida. I believe it was 42-0 at one point, 42-13 final. This was maybe the strangest box score that I've seen in a long time. So Mizzou racks up all of 119 yards of total offense in this game. Florida just turns it over all over the place 6 times, 4 returns. Marcus Murphy just had an exceptional game with 3 touchdowns in this one. And Mizzou just scored touchdowns and scored any way possible in this one to defeat Florida. So just your first snapshot thoughts of Mizzou's win in staying in a good spot in the SEC Eastern Division.
Yes, sir. Well, at the end of the day, it's always nice to get a win. It's not always pretty. It's not always how you plan it. It's not always perfect. But if you can get a win, then that's something that you're excited about. And you try and work out the kinks the following week. But from watching the game, I mean, it was great. The offense, they still had some struggles, trying to connect, trying to be on the same page. But the great thing that Mizzou does, and that they did while I was there too, is the attitude of the team was, we're going to stick together no matter what. And if the one side of the ball is struggling or one part the team is struggling, then the other parts are going to pick them up and they're going to do everything they can. And so in the case on Saturday night, the offense it was having difficulty moving the ball. So the defense really stepped it up. They got turnovers, and then Murph, I call him Murph Dog. He just stepped up on the return game and the kickoff and punt return, helping the team out, scoring points. And Mizzou fans will look at it, or even other fans, like, wow, only I think it was like 20 yards passing, and they didn't have a lot of total offense, not even more than 200 or 150 or something like that. And it's like, oh, that's bad. But at the same time, it's a win. If I know that they would like to have better numbers, but they'll take a win over good stats anytime. And so it was definitely an interesting game to watch. I was excited they got the win. I know all the guys are excited about the win. The stats, yeah, they're weird, but I know that the offense is happy that the defense stepped it up, and they're happy to get the win. They're going to stick with each other's back the rest of the year, and hopefully they can continue to get some wins and make it to the end.
Hey, James, this is good that I have you on as well because, man, he's just Marcus Murphy to me, and now Murph Dog. I got that down here. Murph Dog. I like that. So I got to ask you about this because I think we need to make a disclaimer on the stats, and the stats are strange. Mizzou only got 7 first downs. They only had 119 yards of total offense, completed 6 of 18. It just looks like an anemic offensive effort. But you know how football games are coached and how the play calling goes. When you jump out to a huge lead like you do, well, you don't need to be flinging the football all over the place and going crazy. So I think a lot of these offensive totals have much to do with the way the game was played because they had such a big lead based on the returns in the return game and in the defense. So that speaks to it as well, right?
Yes, sir, for sure. I mean, like you said, when you're up and you have points on the board, there's no reason to continue to try and take shots down the field or to take risks. Kind of playing it safe and managing the game well because the defense was doing great out there. They get tired, they need a break, and so when the offense goes out there, yeah, it helps if they can get more first downs and keep moving the ball and put up points themselves. But when they have a score like that, when they're up by 2, 3 touchdowns, all they need to do is be smart with the ball, and so that definitely plays a factor. It's not like they needed to run a reverse pass or continue to go deep and take risk over the middle. They just need to manage the clock and move the ball, give the defense a break, and that's what they did.
Hey, James, aside from the offensive coaching staff and Coach Pinkel, you're pretty qualified to talk about one Matty Mock, who took over for you when you went down last year, really pulled through, can really fire it down the field, make all the throws. Your thoughts about Matty Mock, not just this performance, but going forward as he leads his football team?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's definitely a learning process. There's a difference between being the starting quarterback and being the backup, and so this is his first year starting. Whether no matter how good or how bad he did last year, which thankfully he did really good. This is his first year starting, so there's a lot of different things that go into it and that factor into it, and it's tough. Even I had my struggles as first year starting. Everyone has their struggles first year starting, but he's still able to help his team win. I know they have a couple of losses, but he's doing everything he can to help out the team to move forward. And again, the first year starts. So I think he's going to continue to get better. It's sometimes a lot of ups and downs. He has a short memory, which is really good for taking shots down the field because you can't have big plays without taking risks. And sometimes the fans forget that. Throw an interception or tries to do too much. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place for everything. But at the same time, if he would to reverse field a couple times and then throw a 70-yard bomb for a touchdown, everyone's like, yeah, woo, this guy's great. But then if he does that and then throws an interception, it's like, what is he doing? Throw the ball away or get down or take the check down. And so he's easy to keep doing what he's doing. The talk will be there, good or bad. And I think he's gonna have a turning point, and he's gonna continue to just do well. Right now, I know the offense, they're trying to get some things fixed, and I think that they will. And I'm excited to see what he can do on these later games.
James, got to get your thoughts on the Florida situation. It seems a bit ugly at this point. The Gators, aside from that 2012 campaign when they emerged with 12 wins in that one, or 11 wins, it's been a bit down there, and the expectations are sky high. I don't know that you can relate specifically to that just because Florida's Florida, but at the same time, you were in a Missouri program that was used to success, and you had a down 2012, and there's grumbling and that sort of thing. So just your thoughts about the situation right now at Florida.
It's very difficult. Personally, I really like Jeff Driscoll. I met him at a Manny Passing Academy about I guess a year and a half or two ago, and he's a really nice guy, really cool, and I liked him a lot. So I definitely feel for him. It's tough. He got injured last year, missed a lot of time, and then coming back this year, it messes with the quarterback's psyche whenever you're having to switch quarterbacks and not feeling like everyone is completely behind you. He's in a tough situation, and sometimes you have really bad days. I remember last year against Florida. Yeah, I was coming back from my MCL getting torn or healing, but I had 4 picks against them. It was a terrible game, and so it's tough when you don't feel like everyone's behind you. And when they're switching out the quarterbacks, I know that they have a lot of frustrations on offense, and something that they'll figure out, or they probably already started figuring out, is they need to come together, not get frustrated, and keep positive and keep pushing through. Because the more upset that they get, the more confused or frustrated that they get, then the worse it's going to get for them offensively. Defense is doing well, and I hope that the offense can the team's attitude can be good towards the offense and can be supportive. And it may take some time, but I think they're going to work some things out.
Yeah, you hear about divided locker rooms, and then you hear about other situations where the defense picks it up. I've heard Ray Lewis comment about, picking up some struggling offenses and not even thinking twice, having second thoughts about the offense and just, hey, they do their job. I'm not going to, we're just here to pick them up and do the best we can. You mentioned kind of the ball rolling in the wrong direction for Florida. The same thing seems to be happening at Texas A&M, but the competition's been pretty darn good over the last 3 weeks, so we got to keep that in mind. It's easy for fans and analysts to criticize and say, hey, what's wrong with this football team? But when you're playing 3 of the top 5 teams in the country 3 consecutive weeks, the other guys have something to do with it as well. But wow, this Texas A&M Alabama game, a lot of people in the Alabama camp, and I've got some bloggers that come on here, Ben George in particular, who really know this football team, they were worried. I didn't really see it because I thought this A&M team can't stop anybody on the ground defensively. They've got all sorts of holes. Ole Miss and Mississippi State showed us the blueprint defensively on how to stop Kenny Hill, and I thought Alabama would be in good shape. I was once for one of the few times, right for once of the few times. And for Texas A&M, it just seems to be a difficult situation right now. And just your thoughts about Alabama, Texas A&M, and where these two programs and teams are headed right now?
Well, I definitely did not think it was going to be 59-0 at all. No, Alabama was a good team. Some people had their doubts because they only won by a point against Arkansas. But again, everyone struggles. Every team struggles with wins and performances. And so to see that game, it was a surprise for sure. But I think A&M, they're getting a reality check. They did have some really good games. And then it's not that they couldn't compete with Alabama, but Alabama definitely brought their A game. The defense played well. Blake Sims, the quarterback for Alabama, made great decisions, moving the ball downfield. The running game helped out. That's something that wasn't there last week, and so they were dominant. And then offensively for A&M, the rushing game definitely struggled. I think in the rushing and passing game struggled a little bit. In the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, Alabama had around 200-plus yards of total yards, and then A&M only had 8. And so that's something that was definitely a shocker. But Alabama did a great job. If they can keep playing like that, then I think they're going to be pretty set for the rest of the year and win a lot more games. And as far as A&M, again, they have to come together as a team, and they have to realize some of the things that are happening, and they have to stick together and remember to push through and to fix those spots, not get frustrated. When a team starts getting frustrated and pointing fingers, that's when teams fall apart. And hopefully A&M, they aren't doing that, and they can continue to pick each other up. They have some tough games ahead of them, and if they can continue to execute, to be fearless, to be smart with the ball on offense, and then defensively get some good stops, I think they can win quite a bit more games.
Hey, James, Nick Saban made some comments last week after the win over Arkansas that he gets sick and tired of the expectations being what the expectations are, meaning they go on the road in the SEC, they win a game regardless of what the score is. He said his team played extremely hard. They made mistakes, turned the ball over, penalties. He wasn't happy with that, but he gets tired of, hey, you're Alabama, you got to win 50-0 every week or we're not happy. So I find it interesting, and if you're really a football geek and want to be entertained, you go on and you click on different Nick Saban press conferences. I did this the other day. I know it's a bit of an illness, but I did this the other day just to be entertained by Nick Saban being so sarcastic to the media, but he's really saying a lot and unveiling a lot of what happens with his football team, whether he's happy or disgruntled. And in this case, he was just basically saying, I'm proud of our football team for gutting out a win against an SEC team on the road. Now he turns around, and I think he made a statement by saying, hey, if you take everything into consideration, this team couldn't have played any better than it did right here, and making a statement after the game. Do you pay any attention to what your coach has to say to the media? Did you as a player or the players you were around at Mizzou, did you guys listen in on what Coach Pinkel had to say?
Sometimes, yes, sir. Most of the time, we would hear about it from reporters asking us, like, "Hey, Coach Pingle said this," or Coach Pingle said that, or sometimes we'd see like an article, and at the same time, you don't pay attention to it. But then, as a player, when you hear your coach defending you and having your back, then that definitely feels good, especially to the media, because we're told as players, "Hey, watch what you say. Don't be overconfident. Don't be cocky." Don't talk bad about the other team. Don't make excuses. Be respectful, things like that. And so whenever he goes out and he says, we're to say something like Saban did about saying how they won and how the fans aren't doing a good job and things like that. I think that's good for the team, all the players, for them to see their coach sticking out for them. They want to go out and they want to perform better because it's like, hey, look what our coach just said about us and look how he's defending us. Now we need to make him look better, to make him look good, and go out and play our best. So we didn't always pay attention to it, but when it was topics like that or big topics, then it was like, whoa, okay, yeah, he's with us all the way. It's time for us to step it up.
I want to let everybody know that we've got Brittnee Taylor Newman on deck to talk some other SEC teams, and she's standing by as well. I want to get James' thoughts on a couple more football games. We got Georgia-Arkansas, James, in a situation here where people were kind of feeling like the Hogs were ready to break through and finally win a game in the SEC after losing 15 straight. Need to remind everyone that this is a different Arkansas team than the one that lost the first 5, 8, 10 of those 15. They are playing extremely well. Thought this might be a competitive game at home against Georgia. The Dogs, for those people that thought that possibly they were going to cave in after Todd Gurley left the situation, and we'll see how that plays out going down the road, they have really responded with, unfortunately, got to bring it up, the 34-0 win at Mizzou. Then they followed this up by going to Arkansas and dominating most of this game. The Hogs made a bit of a comeback, made it a little scary in the end to a certain extent, but Nick Chubb is a freshman running back, 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. I know you took in most of this football game, so your thoughts about the Dogs and the Hogs?
Well, I mean, Chubb has been stepping it up for sure. Last week against us or Mizzou, I think he had like 42 carries or something like that, something ridiculous. And then this year, I think this game, he had around 30 carries for the 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he's really been stepping it up. And I'll tell you, that does help the quarterback out. When the run game is good, when you can hand the ball off and he can break one for 80 or he can get the 2 yards that you need, it takes a lot of the pressure off. And so the Georgia offense looked really good. Hudson Mason, he did really good, made smart decisions. I know, I think he only threw like 17 passes, but he did good. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. He was smart with the ball. And the defense really did good, too, against Arkansas. I know at halftime, I think they held them to 6 points, and then Arkansas started to come back at the end. But Georgia did really well. They definitely had the loss against South Carolina and so a couple of the other games, having some struggles on different sides of the ball, but they've really stepped it up, and I think Georgia, they're going to continue to do well, and they're going to be a tough team to beat. And Arkansas, I mean, they've had a couple close games towards getting close to the end, and then they kind of got pulled away from, and they're doing really well. I know their record doesn't show for how good of a team that they are this year, and hopefully some things will start going their way so they can win some of those games at the end and not just be close the whole time and lose. So I think that they continue to do well. I know the quarterback, I believe, Allen had about, I think it was 2 picks. Turning the ball over, that's difficult. It kind of kills the momentum sometimes, but I know he's doing the best that he can to help the team win, taking chances. Some of them are paying off, and some of them he's throwing interceptions or not the best decisions, and that's something that you do as a player. You take chances and try and practice that they always work out for the best, and sometimes they don't. But it was a good matchup. Definitely, I thought it was going to be a little bit different, but 2 good teams, and I know Georgia came out on top.
Hey, James, I'm going to lean on you just a little bit in regards to quarterback play in particular. Hudson Mason, this is a guy that had to take over for Aaron Murray late in the season last year. He's been waiting. He's a senior quarterback, when waiting behind Aaron Murray, knowing that he's not going to play apart from injury. He finally got his shot late last season. He was impressive, and I'm not going to say he carried the offense, but he put up big numbers against Georgia Tech and in the bowl game against Nebraska. He comes out in this season, and to date he hasn't really been in a situation where they've relied on him heavily the way the games have played out. The running game has been so good the South Carolina game wasn't really in his hands at that point, despite putting up a lot of points and needing some plays late in that game in their one loss. So is it a different mindset for the quarterback? You can see the way things are moving in regards to play calling and mindset and strategy of the offense when you've got the burden of the entire offense versus the running game taking the lead. And we're all expecting Hudson Mason in a big game coming up at some point to have to shoulder this offense.
Yes, sir. I mean, if whatever's working, I know that the coaches or the team's going to stick with. The running game is going well, and if he continues to make good decisions, smart decisions, move the ball down the field, not always trying to take a shot downfield, but taking the short stuff, then personally, I don't think he'll have to rely on his shoulder or rely on his arm for the game to win it or to pull through. If he gets put in that situation, then definitely I think he has the talent. He has the arm for sure. To be able to help their team win and to move them. But if he keeps making good decisions, being smart with the football, taking what they give you, or taking what the defense gives him, then I think that they're going to continue to do well, and it's not going to have to come down on all the pressure on him. They do have a great running game. If they can keep that up, then they're going to be set for the rest of the year. But if he keeps being smart with the ball and making the kind of decisions that he has been, then he won't have to be in a situation like that.
Okay, James, one more here for you. Tennessee, Ole Miss. Rebels struggled early on offense. They never struggled on defense in this one. They take it out 34-3. So the one big question I have for you, as an offensive guy, a quarterback who has faced all sorts of levels of defense and types of defenses, this Ole Miss defense was good last year. They were a mid-range SEC defense, which can place them, take your pick, amongst other conferences. They bring back 9 or 10 starters, and they're just lights out. They are locked in. What do you see out of this Ole Miss defense that just makes them so special?
I think they work together really well. I mean, I know they had, I believe, 7 sacks against Tennessee, and I mean, everyone's holding themselves responsible. Everyone has a gap to fill. Everyone has an assignment to fulfill. And I need to be here. I need to be there. And so they're not worried about, okay, is he going to be where he's supposed to be, or is this guy going to be right behind me, or this or that? They're like, okay, here's what I have to do, and I'm going to do it. They know their responsibilities, and they know what they're supposed to do. And what I've seen from them is they're all doing it. They're working well as a defense. They're flying to the ball. They're bringing the enthusiasm, and they're definitely making some plays. They're not having a lot of busts. They're not having a lot of mistakes. They're not getting upset at each other, and that's what's been helping them out a lot, is them working together so well and being accountable for themselves.
Okay, we've been joined by James Franklin, former Missouri quarterback, of course led the Tigers to the SEC Eastern Division Championship last season and a Cotton Bowl victory and top 10 ranking in the polls. James, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate the time. Hopefully we can have you back sometime.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Take care.
You too.
All right, I want to remind everyone that this is the SEC in 60. We come your way every Monday and also posted on SEC Radio Network, released on podcast as well, and on YouTube at MarkRogersTV. We appreciate James Franklin, former Missouri quarterback, for joining us. We bring in Brittnee Taylor Newman. We've had a number of discussions, Brittnee. Thanks so much for joining us about the SEC and college football. And let's talk some SEC here. Brittnee joins us from football.com and also Last Word on Sports. Brittnee, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I got to apologize. I'm just a little bit hoarse from all the yelling I did at my television set over the weekend with these upsets.
Okay, well, I was going to go in that direction because we had a game that doesn't involve the SEC, but had the interest of a lot of SEC fans on Saturday night. So your thoughts coming back from Florida State Notre Dame and how that one played out? It was one of the better games of the year, really did not let us down.
What a matchup. Yeah, absolutely. It was a very, very, very exciting game to see. I think that SEC fans were probably tuning in knowing that there's a good chance they could be facing either one of those teams in a college playoff scenario. So I'm sure there was plenty of SEC fans kind of tuning in between commercial breaks.
Yeah, it certainly turned out to be a different Notre Dame team than what we've seen on the national stage against elite competition in the last 10 or 15 years. And maybe Brian Kelly's recruiting classes are coming to fruition. They are really good. But Florida State, once again, found a way, and that guy, Jameis Winston, in the second half turned out to be a different quarterback than he was in the first half. He's got a penchant for doing this in huge games of just being nearly flawless. And, wow, got to give it up for the guy that you may question his decisions off the field. They're a bit disturbing at times, but, again, we've discussed it several times on the field. Not just the talent, but the ability to come through in the clutch, make the right decisions. And I don't think he's the best leader at this point, but he definitely has innate leadership skills and qualities, and you see that come out in these type situations as well from Mr. Jameis Winston. All right, Brittnee, let's talk about those Florida Gators, because we make the transition from Florida State to Florida, and there's been a huge swing in this series in the last 3 or 4 years. And it's not gone the way of the Gators, but that's kind of the last thing that they need to be concerned with right now is Florida State and reaching that level. It got even uglier Saturday night. If you just look at the score, 42-13 at home against Mizzou, a key SEC Eastern Division showdown. So up to that point, regardless of what we all thought of Florida and the mess that it was becoming, they still had a shot to play themselves back in the division race and get themselves back into it. And Mizzou didn't even play that well, and I don't want to take anything away from Mizzou, but Florida gave them the game with 6 turnovers and return yardage all over the place for Mizzou, and it got rather ugly. So this has turned into a situation where Will Muschamp has gone from the hot seat to, I don't know what you could call it, the smoldering seat at this point. So, Brittnee, your thoughts about the Florida situation?
Yeah, well, certainly not to take anything, away from Missouri. I've always loved Missouri. Big fan of James Franklin, who you just had on, so that was kind of fun to get to see him. But they didn't play very well Saturday night, and only 119 total yards of offense, and yet still somehow Florida was not able to overcome that. It was a 6-turnover game. Quite sloppy. We know how the fans felt about it. You heard that Fire Muschamp chant sort of ringing through Ben Hill Griffin Stadium Saturday night. And so it would seem now that the question would be, will Athletic Director Jeremy Foley fire him at the end of the season, or now as they're heading into a bye week, a week before they face off against the Georgia Bulldogs in the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville? But the Gators are going to have to take into consideration he does have 3 more years on his contract, $2 million a year buyout. They're going to have to pay him $6 million to go ahead and finish buying out his contract. But with things like the SEC Network contract that they've got with media this year, they do have extra money coming in. They can afford the $6 million bill. What they can't afford is to continue to face boosters while losing games like the one against Missouri Saturday night. They did have a shot, as you said, to be able to come back perhaps in the SEC East earlier in the year, but at this point it looks like it's going to be all Georgia.
I know the Florida situation, it's not just that it would be one thing possibly if they came in with Will Muschamp and weren't able to keep the standard of recruiting, but the recruiting rankings tell us that maybe they're not top 5 classes, but they've recruited well. It's just when they can't take care of the football, that they can't execute on offense, and this has been going on since Urban Meyer left. Even 2 years ago when they broke through with 11 wins, got to the Sugar Bowl, and that was all predicated on defensive play. Jeff Driscoll, I have been a defender of Jeff Driscoll because I just have not seen the weapons around him or the offensive line play in protecting him, but he is even, and you see this sometimes with quarterbacks, not given much support after a while, they start to implode as well, and Driscoll just had an awful game in this one. They've got a type of 2-quarterback system going, and that usually doesn't spell anything good for Florida. So I'll go with this question, Brittnee. What do you think needs to happen down the stretch for Will Muschamp to keep his job? What do you think the standard is? What would be that bottom tier number of victories or a key victory that could save his job at Florida?
I think that an upset of the number 9 ranked Georgia Bulldogs certainly wouldn't hurt him, but Gator fans are not used to losing. They are used to dominating the SEC East and really just the SEC in general, especially when you're looking over the last 10 years, 10 years of football. I'm not certain that 11-2 season is kind of a distant memory at this point. And when you look at, a former Florida coach, Ron Zook, who went 7-5, 7-5, 8-5, these middle of the road seasons tend to kind of be the tipping point for Gator Nation. I'm really not sure that even a win against Georgia and maybe a run at the SEC East would be enough to save Muschamp at this point. He's had a couple of years to pull in his own recruits, as you said. Not sure that there really is much that can be done at this point.
Yeah, it would take a miracle. It would take a Georgia win and/or a Florida State win and maybe a decent bowl win at that point. I thought beginning the season that maybe 7 or 8 wins would get it done. That's going to be somewhat difficult at this point. You could also reason that even their one SEC win in defeating Kentucky was a bit marred, was a bit questionable. They won it in 3 overtimes, and there were some questionable calls in that game. So difficult situation at Florida. It so happens, as you clearly pointed out, that kind of the low point of the season comes right before the bye week. Jeremy Foley says that he won't change coaches during the season, but athletic directors have been known to back coaches or give a vote of confidence or make a statement that's a bit marginalized and then decide to do something else when the pressure from the boosters and the alumni set in. So the Florida situation is not good, but that's a program that can turn it around in a heartbeat. They have all the resources and all the money and the fan base and the recruiting base to make things happen if they get the right guy in place, and we could speculate on down the road of who that guy could be. Brittnee, also wanted to talk to you about we touched on it briefly with James concerning Alabama and Texas A&M, but we were more focused on the Tide. So just your thoughts about wow, Texas A&M. This was the 6th ranked team in the country 3 weeks ago, and they have not looked good since. And now Texas A&M loses 59-0 to Alabama, which was no shock that they lost at Alabama, but in the manner in which they did. Just makes you wonder where this football team's headed.
Yeah, it was definitely an unexpected loss in the way that it happens. Kevin Sumlin's offense has never been held to single digits in a game before, much less shut out completely. We did see this kind of start in their loss to Ole Miss last week. The first half, the offense was shut out. They were able to score some points in the second half. This week, the shutout lasted the entire game. Not typical of Aggie offense. I know there was questions coming into this year on how productive the offense would be able to be without Johnny Manziel at the helm, but it seems that they have kind of decreased in productivity as the season has gone on. We thought there'd be a stronger showing based on what we saw at the beginning of the season. But Kevin Sumlin, one coach who's probably not worried about the security of his job, as you see with Muschamp. He signed a new contract last year, 6 years, $30 million. But he did hint in a post-game press conference at possibly taking a look at some personnel changes moving forward. So perhaps some of the other staff at Texas A&M is on the hot seat this Monday morning after that revenge loss to the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering, and typically you see in a blowout game that the defense will loosen up and you'll get some trash yardage and some hidden yardage, some easy yardage, but Alabama just didn't let off the throttle defensively the entire game, and Texas A&M could do nothing. I think we were all a bit fooled by the opening week showing against South Carolina when Kenny Hill established himself, at least at that point, as a Heisman Trophy candidate, and the A&M offense is just so diverse. Spread them out, throw it all over the place. That they're feared to a certain extent, but that not being the case over the last 3 weeks, Kenny Hill could only generate 138 yards on 26 attempts, meaning he's completing most of those passes, but Alabama would not let anybody free downfield, and they wrapped up the tackle as soon as guys were catching 3- and 4-yard passes, and it was a dominant performance by Alabama. And we've got to keep in mind that A&M may have caught Bama at the wrong possible time, coming off a disappointing showing against Arkansas, preceded by the loss at Ole Miss.
Yeah, if there was a week when you didn't want to mess with Nick Saban, it was this weekend for sure.
Yeah, not a real good place to find Alabama lined up on the other side of the football at this point for Texas A&M. But I think it's a very different situation than what we see in Florida, as you pointed out. Kevin Sumlin is very secure in his standing. Yes, this is not where he wanted this team to be right now, especially, again, 3 top 5 opponents consecutively is about as difficult as it can possibly get. At the same time, it's just the way they've not competed on the field. But Kevin Sumlin has brought in top 5 recruiting classes. They have a stadium renovation. They own the recruiting base in Texas. They have completely stolen that away from Texas over the past couple of years since Sumlin arrived. So he's in a good place. Just he needs to work some things out concerning his football team. And we will be listening up for possible personnel changes and some coaching assignments being changed, as you hint to right there with Texas A&M going forward, because they are not going to compete in the SEC Western Division, but they still want to finish strong, go to a good bowl game, and set themselves up for a big 2015. So, Brittnee, this top 5 in the country, I don't know if we're going to start taking an SEC Western Division poll and then a poll for the rest of the nation, if it's going to come to that at some point. But right now we've got 4 of the top 5 teams in the country coming out of the SEC Western Division. I could make all sorts of disclaimers that the scheduling doesn't allow for enough teams to play out-of-conference games against difficult opponents, or schools don't schedule enough difficult opponents, meaning Alabama scheduled a pretty good West Virginia team, but that's their only barometer against the rest of the nation, and we could go through the entire situation team to team. But there's no doubt that this is the best division in college football, and it's just hit a crescendo here where they have cluttered up the top 5.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit funny to look at the poll. You do feel like you're looking at an SEC West poll that Florida State has somehow snuck their way into. But I think when you look at the 4 teams that are there, it's kind of the boys from Alabama, Auburn, and Alabama against the Magnolia State, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. The team that seems to me to have the strongest chances of making it out of there alive, because they are going to cannibalize. Ole Miss and Mississippi State play each other. Auburn and Alabama play each other. So you've only got a couple of contenders that can make it out of there. I think the team that has the best shot is going to be Mississippi State. I know that's the trendy pick. They're number 1 right now. But when you look at Ole Miss and Alabama, they each have 3 top 25 ranked teams to play. They've got LSU, Auburn, and Mississippi State. Auburn has 3 as well. Ole Miss only has Mississippi State, only has 2 in Ole Miss and Alabama. So one less chance to be able to be tripped up there as they move towards that SEC championship berth at the end of the season. Granted, those are not cupcake games. We're talking about Ole Miss and Alabama, but one less chance. I think something to take a look at as we move into the next week will be how Mississippi State handles the bye week. For teams that are strong contenders like that, sometimes the bye week can help them. They kind of get a week off to heal, recoup, come back refreshed and focused. And then sometimes it can kind of disjoint them a little bit, take away from the momentum, get them out of their normal rhythm. So one thing to look at will be how Mississippi State handles this bye week. But if they're able to come back from it refreshed and focused, ready to go, take care of business against Ole Miss and Alabama, I think that they've got a straight shot right into the SEC championship game, where they will presumably face off against Georgia at this point. And I don't see the Bulldogs being able to upset Dak Prescott and his team at that point. So I think Mississippi State is probably my pick for strongest contender. Auburn right behind them, but Mississippi State is my pick to be able to win it out.
Okay, Brittnee, you're on record. I didn't expect you to go out there and make a prediction for us. Mississippi State and Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Absolutely, I'm sticking with it.
The last time Mississippi State made an SEC championship game was back in 1998, and they faced a Tennessee team that was number 1 in the country, and I was sitting in the press box at the Georgia Dome watching that game unfold as Mississippi State almost pulled off an enormous upset of the number 1 team in the country, held a lead with about 5 minutes to play, and then it unraveled from there, and Tennessee went on to win the national championship, the first BCS championship there. Very interesting. I'm going to be interested, Brittnee, because I believe it's 8 days from now, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will be releasing its first selections of who, at this point, would be their selections for the College Football Playoff, and I think they're going to actually release all the way out through the top 25. So these could be elimination games, and will be by nature to a certain extent. Obviously, the Egg Bowl and the Iron Bowl and the Ole Miss Auburn game, and there are so many teams competing. There's a cross-sectional number of games that are going to be huge over the next 5 weeks. But as we saw with Ole Miss defeating Alabama, and we see it with Mississippi State and Auburn, despite a loss, if the perception's there that this division is so rock-solid strong and better than any other football being played anywhere, that sure, you can't lose 3 games. But, wow, a first loss is certainly, unless it looks really bad and is ill-timed, isn't going to hurt a Mississippi State or Ole Miss at this point, and will probably, if you can hold your own against Alabama and Auburn, and your one loss is against the #1 Mississippi State team, placing ourselves in Ole Miss's shoes, it appears as though that division could be represented twice by the College Football Playoff, that it's possible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've even looked at a scenario today where they talked about a 2-loss Auburn perhaps losing to either Ole Miss or Bama, still having a stronger schedule than teams like Michigan State and making it into the playoff. At this point, barring any unexpected upsets from amongst those 4 teams in the SEC West, I think you absolutely could end up seeing 2 teams from the SEC West make an appearance.
I'm old school, and I don't believe in the eyeball judgment of analysts and people. I think it needs to be an objective system, and we've got a selection process at this point, so it's not a true playoff in my estimation. I think every conference, I think you set yourself up for huge issues when you have a 14 playoff and you have 5 power conferences. So you automatically eliminate somebody, and in this case, 2 conferences may be eliminated. You cheapen the conference championship, and you go with the eyeball test above anything else, because, again, unfortunately, there aren't enough cross-sectional games being played across the country to rate these schools against other areas of the country. We don't have an Alabama-Oregon game to go by, or a Michigan State-Auburn game to go by. We simply watch the games and rate the teams based on their competition within the conference, because there are very few of those games being played. A Michigan State-Oregon type game. Auburn-Kansas State is a really good one to go by, as well, as Kansas State continues to win and may win the Big 12 championship. So in my perfect world, we set up a formula schedule just like the NFL, and Alabama, just taking the Tide for example, fans, not picking on the Crimson Tide, but Alabama, for example, doesn't go out and schedule its own games and go out and say, we're going to play Western Carolina, we're going to take on Chattanooga, we're going to take on Wisconsin, so we're going to take on one toughie, but there's going to be a formula schedule, and it's going to be even, unlike the NFL schedule, which is based on trying to create parity, so they give the better teams tougher schedules. This would be a balanced schedule based on the previous year's standings and results, and then Alabama, picking on the Tide again, for example, let's say they have to play, and I'm not talking about a ridiculously hard schedule, but they have to play 4 representatives from the other Power 5 conferences, and then you have a greater resume and number of results to choose from and to observe, and the resumes much more broad in perspective of trying to rate these teams against each other. So that's the way I would do it.
I've gone on record already and said that I would support a 16-team playoff. It would add 2 extra weeks to the season. We could just whittle everybody down. At that point, top 16 teams, you're not really complaining that teams 17 and 18 deserved a spot. But, that's just me. Maybe we'll get there someday. How
great would that be, Brittnee? Because then they're like the NCAA tournament. Everyone gets represented. And we could debate whether we would let in the MAC and the Sun Belt Conference, or they would need to go play their own championship. I've set up models including them or not including them. But then you represent every conference, and then there is also room for subjective analysis to say the SEC is the best conference, we believe, based on just perception and based on previous year's results, and therefore they will get more entries in. But every other conference is still going to be represented. Maybe the SEC is going to get an extra wild card team in. The 16-team format can be done, and it can be done within the calendar year. And yeah, being the geek that I am at times with college football, I've worked it out, and it does work, and it would be great to see.
I'm pretty sure College Football Nation would stand behind us if we took this to the NCAA.
Oh, yeah, College Football Nation would. Yes, the fans. It just means more college football.
Yeah.
More people are involved. So, and it would not cheapen the regular season, and I have an argument lined up for that. So we will bore you another time with that. We can talk college football playoffs. We have plenty of time to do that over the next 6 weeks or so, talking about college football playoffs. So, hey, Brittnee, thanks so much for joining us. Let us know what you're working on this week.
Oh, just a couple of SEC preview pieces and a couple of things sort of highlighting the ACC, Florida State moving forward and what they've got to do to be able to stay in contention, the ACC Coastal. And you can check all of that out on football.com and lastwordonsports.com.
Very cool. And it's, let me get this straight, at Brittnee Taylor.
Yes, on Twitter, BRITTNEE.
And then you've got an alter ego out there as well, don't you?
I have a personal blog where I cover my love for college football and all things about life in the South, and that's thedadgumdebutante.com.
And that is very cool, because I think a lot of people want to stray from just this sports concentration, but they still want that feel, because that's part of their life. That's part of the fabric, specifically of the South. And I've checked out your website there, and it's really fun and it's really cool. So I love what you're doing there.
Thanks so much, Mark.
All right, Brittnee, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully we can have you back soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
So, again, we'll just wrap it up here and let you know that this is the SEC in 60, and so what we do is 60 full minutes of SEC football. So even in March, we're going to be talking about football for 60 minutes. We can do it every week. We know that you can't get enough out there. So I'm Mark Rogers of MarkRogersTV. Join me on Twitter at MarkRogersTV. We download this also as well as a podcast that you can catch on Podbean or on iTunes at MarkRogersTV. Just do the search there. You can find us on YouTube at MarkRogersTV, and also my own personal site, MarkRogersTV.com. Got over 1,000 college football videos. We're constantly cranking out content on the SEC and elsewhere. You can also check me out on a show that we're working on with iTalk SEC. Great outfit there with Scott Moore. iTalk SEC. They have a radio show every night, Monday through Thursday, throughout the Southeast. I'll get you those radio call letters at a later date, but check your local listings for iTalk SEC radio, 5 to 7 Central, 6 to 8 Eastern, throughout the Southeast, specifically in Alabama, the Gulf Coast, some Arkansas stations as well with iTalk SEC. I join them every Thursday night, again, from 7 to 9 Eastern, 7 to 9 Eastern, and 6 to 8 Central. And we've got some exciting news to unveil concerning iTalk SEC on down the line and my involvement there. I want to thank Dr. SEC Peter Flournoy for inviting me to do this show. It's going to be a whole lot of fun as we ramp it out for the rest of this season. SEC Radio Network. I don't know how he got those call letters, because if you look that up on the internet, that is a good handle to have, the SECRadioNetwork.com, and you can find us there, as well as a ton of great shows involving specific teams and the SEC in general. I'm Mark Rogers of MarkRogersTV. If you follow me on Twitter, hey, we will discuss some college football. We will talk it up 24/7, 365. May God dearly bless you, and we will catch you next time.